I was just begging him not to harm my family.
Were those your words to him?
Yes.
The entire experience, he was angry. I said, I'm in 8th grade. I'm too young to lose my dad.
You know, he was threatening, saying, you know, that his boys had been following my dad, and that he knows where my dad's at all times. He knew where my little brother went to school.
This man trapped his wife with a phone app, ambushed my husband, beat him to death in a car, left him in that car for days at someone else's damn like the body man, McQueen's house. And I hope he spends the rest of his life in prison. He shouldn't be amongst us. He needs to be in walls like an animal that he is.
Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload. You already know. Yes, you. Boo boop be do. I love and I appreciate you so much. We're gonna get straight into it today. I don't think I have any housekeeping or anything like that. Thank you guys so much for the love on the last video. Thank you also for people who understood what I was trying to say during certain parts of that video. I know my emotions were really high, and that you guys could feel that just through the screen in my eyes. But it was a tough one, sensitive topic in a lot of aspects. I didn't mean to offend anybody by saying, you know, if we're white, don't talk. But people got it, what I was trying to say in terms of that specific area there. Okay. Anyways, I'm not always the most eloquent. Maybe those people were new. I don't know. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you just didn't like it. That's fine. That's your opinion. That's not what I meant. Yeah. All right. Let's get into today's case. Today we are talking about the chilling murder of 57-year-old film executive Gavin Smith. He is a man who lived very, in quite a high-profile world in Hollywood, you know, surrounded by luxury, fame, the glitz, the glamour, but his life took a dark turn, leading to a tragic death that absolutely rocked not only did the industry, but his family as well. Today's case is filled with twists, hidden secrets, and an outcome that took years to uncover. Before we get into it, we definitely need a riddle. So today's riddle: what goes up and down but doesn't move? While you think about that, I have one quick message for you. I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Aura, aka your one-stop shop for all your online safety needs. For example, I want you to think about the number of spam calls, spam texts that you receive each and every day, and the amount of times that you are sitting there second-guessing whether the message was real or a scam, because scammers these days are getting too good. I don't know if you heard that ding. Probably a scammer. What about a time that you're waiting on a very important call and then you just didn't end up answering because it's an unknown number and you're just just in case, because that's me on the daily. To be fair, I am a lot more hypersensitive after getting my identity stolen. Not only does Aura help protect against these types of scammers, they also have you covered for financial fraud protection. You can get alerted in minutes when your credit card has been compromised. They also have Aura VPN, which protects your internet connection with military-grade encryption and blocks known scam and phishing sites for added protection. That's what happened to me. It was a phisher. With over 100 virtual locations, you can access global content safely, whether you are at home or on the go. Your data is safeguarded with the same security standards as bank and the military, and you can trust that they will never sell your data to third parties. Also, if you ever need their support, they have 24/7 US-based support and fraud specialists available to help anytime if and when you need them. The beauty of this all is that you get all of this in one app at one affordable price, so you don't have different, you're not trying to organize all of these different features like antivirus, VPNs, fraud protection. Aura's got it all for you. So don't leave yourself or your family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. Head on over to aura.com/SherrilynDale or click the link in my description to try 2 weeks for free. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if your personal data is exposed. Once again, that's aura.com/SherrilynDale or click the link in my description to try 2 weeks for free. Thank you again so much, Aura, for sponsoring today's video. All right, I came across this case quite recently. I obviously recognized Gavin, because I saw his photo and like his bright smile. Like his smile is just like so big and captivating. And I remember recognizing it and not knowing much. I think I was getting it confused with another story that I thought I already knew. And I was like, oh, like he looks a little bit different in this one. But no, it was a completely different case. And I ended up like coming back and actually figuring that out because I'm in like a Temptation Island marathon right now, trying to like go back and watch previous episodes after this last one on Netflix. And I think it was season 1 of like the reboot where Mark Wahlberg, not like Mark Wahlberg, but like Temptation Island Mark Wahlberg, when he like took over the show. And there was a cast member on there named Evan, and he was kind of talking about his dad and this tragedy and his murder. And I was like, what the heck? And obviously that, you know, sent me into a rabbit hole. And then I started figuring out, I'm like, oh, I recognize Gavin. This isn't the case that I was thinking about. And then I went into this and it's just, oh my God, it's insane. Buckle up, especially for the end, because I don't think you're ready. I still like rage a little bit here, but anyways, let's get started. Gavin Smith was born on December 10th, 1954 in San Fernando Valley of California. He attended Van Nuys High School, where he became a standout player on the basketball team. His exceptional skills earned him a spot as a second-team All-American by Parade magazine in 1973. He went on to continue his basketball journey at the University of California, UCLA, if you will, playing under the legendary coach John Wooden, aka the Wizard of Westwood. And Gavin was actually part of the 1975 NCAA championship winning team, contributing to UCLA's 10th and final title under Coach Wooden. After his time in UCLA, Gavin transferred to the University of Hawaii, where he set the school's single season scoring record with an average of 23.4 points per game. It's a record that actually still stands today. So he obviously stellar athlete. After college, though, Gavin decided to give acting a try. He was cast in minor roles in films such as Glitz, which was in 1988. He played a bodyguard. And then Swinging in the Painter's Room, also a film in 1988. He appeared as a character named Guy with Fur Hat. And then in Cobb in 1994, he was a bartender, and this was in the video of like a biopic of baseball legend Ty Cobb. Now, in 1989, while he's working as a bartender at Ports O' Call, I think it's Ports O' Call in LA, he's working towards his acting career, you know, like doing the whole bartending waiter thing to supplement an income. While he's waiting for that to take off, he meets a young woman named Lisa Dobson who, you know, parked herself up at his bar, and sparks flew. She later recalled her first impressions of Gavin, saying, "I just thought he was so charming and I was thrilled when he asked for my number." She described him as a gentleman who made her feel like a princess. In that same year, November of 1989, Lisa and Gavin married. They went on to build a life together, welcoming 3 sons, Evan, Austin, and Dylan, to complete their family, and they settled into family life in the West Hills in California. And when Lisa met Gavin, she was an accountant, but after she had her kids, her primary focus was the home front. She became a homemaker and devoted herself to raising their children and managing the household. Unfortunately for Gavin, his acting career didn't take off the way that he hoped. In addition to the acting roles that he was booking, he was also a stunt double, and through that, he suffered a pretty devastating back injury. This is something that did have devastating consequences for him, which we will get to in a minute. Despite not taking off in front of the camera, he did have a successful career in the film industry. Eventually, he was working as a distribution executive for 20th Century Fox, and over his 18-year tenure at Fox, Gavin was instrumental in the distribution of several blockbuster films that we would recognize off the hop, one of them being my all-time favorite, Titanic, another Avatar, and then also Star Wars, like the original trilogy re-releases. By all outward appearances, the Smiths were, you know, like a picture perfect family. Lisa's dedication to her children gave Gavin the freedom to focus on his job, you know, distributing these major films, and he always credited her and her support for the success that he was able to have at work. And even like when he was at home, they were both very active in their sons' lives. Friends and neighbors saw Gavin as a loving father and Lisa as a very supporting wife and very present mother, obviously. And together they just kind of seemed to have this, I guess, ideal suburban family dynamic. His son Evan told People magazine in 2019 that he and his dad got along swimmingly. He said he was one of his best friends, taught him so much, and he just looks back and remembers a very great childhood with him. Now, by the late 2000s, the Smiths had spent about 2 decades together, and what looked like a picture-perfect family life was quietly unraveling behind the scenes. Because of Gavin's severe back injury during his earlier stint as a stuntman, he developed a dependency on painkiller medications, and as a result, in 2008, he entered a rehabilitation facility to address his addiction. It was during that stay that Gavin met a woman named Shandria Creech. Shandria was a fellow patient at the treatment center, and the two of them formed a close connection, a connection that ultimately led to Gavin and Shandria's relationship turning into a romantic affair that lasted in total for about 4 years, like on and off. Now, not only was Gavin married, but so was Shandria. And in 2010, Shandria's husband, John Creech, found out about their affair and confronted them. This confrontation allegedly was explosive, to say the least, and it even exposed what was happening to Gavin's children. And on December 8th, 2010, 2 of Gavin Smith's teenage sons personally went to John Creech to apologize for their father's involvement in, with Shandria, this relationship, and begged John not to harm their dad in retaliation for this affair. Allegedly, during this confrontation, John Creech told the boys, "You just saved your father's life by coming here," obviously insinuating that he had thoughts of harming Gavin, and the boys definitely got that message loud and clear. They also confronted their dad, saying, if you want to still be in our lives and be a family, you need to never speak to this woman again. Gavin did break off contact with her for a while, but ultimately they resumed the affair, and 510 days after his sons talked to John Creech, Gavin disappeared. In the days before his 2012 disappearance, Gavin attended a movie convention in Las Vegas. When he arrived back to LA, I guess he did not return back to his family home. Instead, he opted to stay with a friend. I think it was a close coworker friend who lived nearby, and that was on the night of May 1st. Now, according to reports, Gavin and the friend had watched television together before she had gone up to go to bed, and he said something along the lines of he was also going to be going to bed shortly too. He also spoke to his wife, Lisa, who was taking care of her mother, who was quite sick at the time, and he told Lisa he was going to pick up their son, Austin, from school. The next day, Gavin didn't show up to pick up Austin, and when Lisa found this out and found out that he didn't call into work either and didn't show up, she immediately files a police report on May 2nd, 2012. In the days following Gavin's disappearance, everyone was, boots on the ground. Family, friends, he had a lot of family that came in, and they were just going around talking to people, handing out flyers, releasing online campaigns, making media appearances, begging for his safe return, and even had a $20,000 reward.
I have hope because I have no body, and I have no car, and I have no cell phone. But the reality is, I think he's gone. But I don't really know 100% what's happened to him. And until I actually know, I can't rest.
Unfortunately, it took the family 2 years to find out what happened to Gavin. Now, early on in the disappearance, obviously, his family tells investigators about his affair and this ominous comment that John Creech had made to the sons. And when they went to go visit John and Shandria was the one who was home at the time. And investigators said she was very emotional. She also seemed scared, a little apprehensive and evasive. She said that her and Gavin had spoke on May 1st, which police were able to see based on his phone records, but she said she hadn't spoken to him since and didn't know where he was. So like last time she saw him, everything was okay. While they were at her house though, talking to her, they see John pull up in his car, and all of a sudden he like kind of stalls and then like peels off. So immediately suspicious. And they learn that he's on probation for drug dealing, which makes them want to obviously interview him even more. He's not down, but they do have good old technology and were able to pull up phone records and GPS coordinates, which showed investigators that not only were Shandria and Gavin still meeting up and did that night, John's phone also pinged in the same area Gavin and Shandria were visiting the evening of May 1st. I guess it was kind of like this lover's lane type area. I think for people like in the area, I don't want to like say like, oh, like, because we'll get into that in a minute based on her testimony, but it was like, you know, just like one of those like little secluded kind of like areas. Obviously, this is not enough for an arrest, but it was enough for them to look further into John Creech. And in June, they were able to obtain a search warrant to his and Shandria's house. So they showed up when John was allegedly in Chicago. Shandria said like, pretty much like, yeah, my husband's in Chicago. I don't know what he's doing there. She wasn't even able to say like what he did for work, which was also very suspicious to investigators because I guess they lived in a nice cul-de-sac, but their house was like super bougie, like a plethora of security cameras all over the place. These like gold, I don't know, like lion or something like that statues outside. Like it was really, really done up. And she was like, I don't know what he does for money. So, I mean, what does that tell you? While they're there though, they seize things like their cell phones and multiple computers. And at this point, they are ultimately able to have him agree to an interview while he's out in Chicago, where he does admit knowing who Gavin was, but definitely downplayed everything. He even denied threatening Gavin and kind of like played this charismatic, chill, cool guy. Like, yeah, I know about that. I knew about him, but oh no, like I never threatened him. And one of the investigators I saw during an interview, I think it was for kind of like one of those, like, you know, like a Dateline almost, Hollywood Homicide, I think it was on. Yeah, he said like typical, whatever kind of like con guy you can think of, just trying to think that they've got like one up on everybody and they're like super calm and collective. And he's like, you mean like everything opposite of what you're saying right now, bud. So he's not admitting any involvement in Gavin's disappearance, but police were able to prove that he was still trafficking narcotics. And so he was arrested for that and off the streets while investigators kept looking for Gavin and getting answers. They then go back to the call logs and they see that on John's phone records, he had called a guy named Jorge Valle 7 times the night that Gavin disappeared. They then see that Gavin's phone and John's phone also pinged in a different location, and it was at a cell tower near Jorge's house. So Jorge's brought in for questioning and makes a bone-chilling confession. He tells investigators he got a call from John Creech in the early hours of May 2nd saying he needed help and that he was on his way to Jorge's house. And he just shows up and he's like, I need help hiding my vehicle. And when he says my vehicle, he's in this black Mercedes, the same vehicle Gavin Smith has. Jorge says that he looks at the vehicle, looks inside and says it looks like there was like a body wrapped up in a sheet, like almost like a mummy, you know, like in this white sheet in the car. And he looks at John and John says, I killed him and I need you to get rid of everything. Jorge tells police he didn't want to be involved, but he follows John to a house in the Porter Ranch area, which is this gated community. John drives the Mercedes in this garage and leaves it. He says then he gets into Jorge's car, asks him to get rid of a cell phone, which Jorge said he did do by throwing it out in a garbage bin at a McDonald's. Even with this information, this isn't enough to take to the district attorney. He never saw a body. He just saw what looked like one wrapped up, and then he didn't remember the license plate of this Mercedes. So detectives were able to find out. Detectives were able to find out that the house that Jorge and John had gone to that night was a workout buddy of John's named Stan McQuay. So they go and talk to Stan, who is super reluctant, but eventually does agree to talk after he talks to a lawyer. And then it sounds like the lawyer was like, he's not going to talk, and then comes out of the room and looks super defeated, and he's like, yeah, he's gonna have to talk. So he talks to investigators, and he says that John showed up that evening with this Mercedes-Benz and wanted to store it in his garage. He said that he was adamant he didn't know that there was a body in there until his garage started smelling. And once he found out, he called John and said, you need to get back here and get this out of my garage. So Stan says John shows up with a U-Haul, took the body out of the car, loaded it into the U-Haul, and then sometime after, he also went back to take the Mercedes. Again, this is not enough for an arrest because they don't have enough proof, like solid evidence beyond like hearsay at this point. It's around 9 months after Gavin disappeared when Shandrika's father was playing tennis with a friend of his who happened to be a retired detective, and he's a mess. He says Shandrika recently moved back home and admitted to him that John killed somebody. So this retired detective happened to know one of the lead detectives in Gavin Smith's disappearance and put him in touch with Shandrika's father. And when he spoke to the detective, he says, listen, I don't know much. I know about a vehicle, like kind of like what they already knew, getting transported. And he at that point thought that potentially it was pieced off and sold and like broken up into different parts, and it would be like really hard to find. He wasn't sure, which obviously would be detrimental to the case to try to like find all of these parts. But Shandrika's dad said, you need to talk to a woman named Rena Lim, who was Shandrika's grandmother's caretaker. Now, at the time that she was Shandrika's grandmother's caretaker, her grandmother was living with her and John in their house. So this woman would have seen a lot, also gotten to know Shandrika and John. And when they track her down, she says that, yes, she was approached by John to rent a storage unit in her name and that he would pay for it. Because she was so close with the family, she didn't really ask many questions and just agreed to do that for John. So she takes police to the storage unit. It's in Simi Valley, and inside unit number 504 is Gavin Smith's Mercedes-Benz. It's fully intact. The plates were removed, but the VIN is still there to confirm that it was his. Once detectives look inside this vehicle, it is instantly clear that something horrific happened. Gavin's body was not inside the car, but there was blood everywhere. It's all over the gray leather seats, on the wheel. There was even like splatter on the roof and doors. It's really a gruesome scene, even like in photos. So the blood evidence gets sent off for testing, and ultimately it does come back matching Gavin Smith. At this point, again, there's not much to go off of in terms of arrest, but in terms of an investigation and wondering if Gavin had just up and left, they were pretty confident that that wasn't the case and ruled that Gavin Smith was likely a murder victim. This is really heartbreaking point of the case because Gavin Smith's wife, Lisa, has spoken to the media quite a bit, and during this time she talked about this time, saying, this was obviously the worst case scenario, the worst suspicions of like, okay, like, is he dead? And this is now confirmed. But she also said that it was a point of almost relief because it told her that he did not purposely abandon the family, especially because there had been so much kind of like heartbreak and turmoil around that part of their life. But everybody in their life keeps going back and having the same sentiment as, it was so clear that they loved each other so, so much. And this was a time that they were just both determined to get through. And so Lisa said, we were devastated. This was like the hardest 10.5 months of our entire lives, just like wondering and not having him. We love him so much. And she's like, he's still the love of my life, the father of my children. And it was almost kind of like validating that he didn't leave us. She said it was almost like a little bit of a relief even for the rest of the world to know as this was unfolding in real time, and obviously people are weighing in with their suspicions like, oh, maybe he like ran off with somebody else, and she's just like no, even in the hard times there was always like the communication and we knew what was going on. So it was also a part of that too, like allowing the rest of the world to know like he didn't leave us, he would have never done that. And she said, you know, she knew from the get-go that something horrible happened because this just wasn't him, that wasn't their relationship. He wouldn't have just abandoned them. So at this time, police also officially named John Creech as a person of interest in the case. So he's already serving his 8-year sentence at the LA County Men's Central Jail on those drug charges. So he's not officially charged. He is in jail on different charges, and now he's named a person of interest. Again, behind the scenes, investigators are just wanting the most solid case that they could make against John. So they continue just to play the long game, wait it out, because they know that, yes, it is feeling like a really long time, but information is coming and the case is unfolding. Then on October 26, 2014, a husband and wife were in the Palmdale area taking their dog Buddy for a walk. And it's like a valley covered area, you know, it's got like the hills. So the dog was off leash and Buddy comes back to the owners with what looked like a human bone in his mouth. So they call authorities, and authorities are able to find a shallow grave that contained the remains of Gavin Smith.
Authorities have recovered the body of a Fox executive who went missing 2 years ago, but his death still remains a mystery.
Now, it's at this point that the information of what happened that night to Gavin comes out, and it is absolutely haunting. I have thought so much about his family while putting this case together, because I cannot imagine what it would have felt like for them to just be in the courtroom hearing this, like learning about what had happened and like looking at this person. Most of the information that was shared came from Shandria, who in exchange for her testimony received immunity from accessory after the fact charges. So Shandria testified that late on the night of May 1st, 2012, she and Gavin did arrange to meet up. She said they met up around midnight in this, again, secluded Lover's Lane spot in the West Hills of the LA area. But she said that they didn't go there to like, you know, make out, according to her. She said that they just sat together in Gavin's Mercedes and insisted that she was acting as a confidant to Gavin over the struggles that he was trying to, you know, work through with everything going on in his life and his family. As they're talking, unbeknownst to them, John Creech, who had tracked Shandria on their Share My Location on his phone, and went to the meeting spot and ambushed Shandria and Gavin in his car. According to Shandria's testimony, John snuck up, opened the car door, and immediately began pummeling Gavin Smith with his fists. She said the attack was brutally violent and one-sided. She insisted that John hit Gavin more than a dozen times and that Gavin wasn't even fighting back, or by the end of the attack not even moving. She said that she did everything she could to stop him. She screamed, begged for John to stop, and at one point she remembers him turning around, telling her to shut the F up, and said, "You're next." So fearing for her life, she fled from the scene in her car while Gavin laid there, last she saw, bloodied and unconscious. Allegedly, John Creech continued to assault Gavin after Shandria left. Prosecutors later described Gavin's murder as almost indescribable violence. He literally beat Gavin to death with his bare hands. The county coroner also testified that the beating was so brutal, Gavin's skull was crushed on both sides. He also showed signs of defense, with defensive wounds on his forearms protecting himself from blows, which is crucial because it shows that Gavin was in defense mode and not the aggressor, which is what John Creech tried to say. So he testified at his own trial and alleged that it was Gavin that started attacking him by trying to choke him and gouge his eyes out. If this is true and he acted in self-defense, you would think that he would probably have no problem at that point then to call 911 and not take steps to like cover up a murder. But that's not what happened, because after killing Gavin Smith, he took extensive steps, as we know, to get rid of his body and evidence. Now, there's been a lot of, negative opinions toward Shandria as well. Obviously, after witnessing the attack, she didn't call police either. She didn't even contact them when she left and moved to her parents' house. But Shandria did also speak about John's history of abuse and rage on the stand. She said that she feared her husband. He was prone to violence, and during their 4-year span of the affair with Gavin, John had repeatedly abused her with what she described as like punishing outbursts and physical assaults, which I think looking back could have potentially like kept Gavin and her like at arm's reach of each other. If the abuse is, she's experiencing abuse and feeling like she needs to lean on somebody, would I agree? Do I agree to do that with like a married man? Absolutely not. I do kind of like try to take into consideration that it doesn't sound like the man that she was with was a kind person in any way. So maybe even just like having a glimpse of what, like a more caring guy was, she was like kind of like latching onto it and kind of just continued the cycle from there. I don't know. I'm not either of them. This is just my thoughts trying to understand this all. She did say that part of the reason why she didn't go to police, though, was partly because she was scared of John, but she also was worried that she was going to get in trouble for not coming forward sooner. And I mean, yeah, both things true. Probably, if it was me, just my opinion, so irrelevant to all of this. I still would have felt like even after like I had left and like felt safe and I was at my family's house, I would have said something, especially if you already know that the investigators are like kind of onto it, because yes, there's the fear of being like, if I say something and then they're not taken into custody, like my life's in danger as well. But like it was pretty well known like in the area that investigators were looking and like pretty confident that John had something to do with it, and we're just like needing that piece to like bring closure to the case and to Gavin's family. On the stand, Shandria also described kind of like what happened after John came home. She said that when he arrived back home, he was covered in blood. He ordered her to take him back to Gavin's car under the pretense that he was going to like take Gavin to the hospital. And then when he returned later back home, like later on that night, he was clearly disposing of evidence. She could tell like, okay, like he never took him anywhere. At the end of trial, there was a little bit of a mishap or issues, I guess, here with the jury. So the jury had started deliberations on what would have been like that Friday at the end of trial and was going into Monday. And one of the jurors didn't show up on that Monday morning. So the judge dismisses this person, brings in an alternate, and orders them to like start deliberations anew. I guess it was like 30 minutes after that new juror came on, they had reached a verdict. And this is tough, you guys. They did not convict John Creech of first or second degree murder. Instead, they found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter in Gavin Smith's death. In July 2017, John Creech was sentenced to 11 years in prison for murdering Gavin Smith. So he is serving his sentence at FCI Victorville Medium 2 in Central California, and the official website states that he will be released from prison on February 17th, 2029, and I'm so pissed off about that because it's so close to one of my daughter's birthdays. Like, screw you, John Creech. This is just like absolutely wild to me. That verdict was just agonizing. Like, just as like a reader and like researcher, like researching this case, I cannot imagine what it would have felt like for the family. And even when I was watching footage of like the jury being the verdict being read, first of all, you can see like John's even like shocked. It was almost like an OJ like moment of like, what the heck is going on? And you could also tell that the judge was absolutely pained over the verdict and gave the highest possible sentence. He even told John at sentencing that, like, in more or less words, like, you are heartless, cruel, and I can see right through you. You have no empathy for what you did. So that's like, oh my gosh, that would be like just like I think the hardest part of being in law in general, whether you're, you know, a lawyer or a judge, looking at somebody and just being able to see right through them. And then that is, you know, the verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant John Creech not guilty of the crime of first-degree murder, not guilty of the crime of second-degree murder, guilty of the crime of voluntary manslaughter of Gavin Smith.
And I guess the jurors were kind of questioned about it after the fact, like, how'd we get there? You know, what happened, guys? And they were like, this was just like a really complicated case, and felt like there just wasn't enough evidence to prove that he had gone with the intention of like murdering someone, that it was just like he arrived and snapped and this was like the rage. And I feel like I could have potentially got on board with that argument if it was like he had, you know, like just like kind of like randomly stumbled across them and not like made the effort of like going and seeking Shandria out and kind of like already like planning and expecting in his head like what he was wanting to do. He also made those intentions very clear, not only to like Shandria, she said like when there would be like violent outbursts about like what had happened, but also to Gavin's sons. Like he's like, yep, you saved your dad's life because I had other plans. And then, you know, fast forward, he does end up dead. I don't know. It's just, yeah, manslaughter. It's not like I accidentally like hit him in rage. No, this was like very provoked. And he lied. He freaking lied on the stand. Also, if this was like it played out the way that he said that it did, again, we go back to why didn't you call 911? Like it makes no sense. Everything he did after the fact shows like there was intention here. Absolutely, there was intention. So I can't wrap my head around that. I can't imagine what the family feels like in like, or what they're gonna be feeling like in just a couple of years, because at this point it's like it's not like unless he like, you know, like adds on additional charges in jail for like something else if he like gets in trouble there. But that's like the full sentence. Like the judge did everything that he could by being like, this is like the maximum that you can get. And once you serve your time, you know, you serve your time, you're done. So like he's gonna be done. That's not like an option for, you know, like parole at that point. Again, like if he's on like good behavior and stuff like that. So it's just freaking wild to me. I hate it. I hate it. Just a dumpster fire of a human. Absolute dumpster fire of a human this guy is. I want to leave off on a more like loving note, and I think something that's really important to wrap this all up with, and it's actually something that I read a statement that Lisa shared about her husband, and I think it's a really good lesson. She said that Gavin was a wonderful husband, you know, and I think despite like people's opinions, she said he did adore her. She knows that, and their family is exactly what he always wanted. She said that just at that period in his life, he had just got lost for a time. And I think that is so heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time, because I don't think a lot of people understand like how often things like this can happen, where yes, there are so many factors that can cause a situation like this for you to temporarily get lost. And like the hope is that, you know, if you love somebody, they'll find their way back and out of it and be able to like heal through like the trauma and everything that they're going through at that point in life. And I guess, I don't know, I think it's really beautiful that this incredible woman is still able to see the good in in her husband and the man that she clearly just like loved and was so devoted to. And even though that there was flaws and mistakes there, still be able to look at him and be like, he was wonderful. Like, I know, I have no doubts that like he adored me and his family, and that this was everything, you know, that he had worked for. And he was just lost and didn't even have time to find himself again. And that breaks my fucking heart. But that is it for me, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the absolute world to me. I love and I appreciate you so, so much. The answer to today's riddle is, quick reminder, what goes up and down but doesn't move? And the answer is a staircase, which is interesting because it couldn't be an elevator, because an elevator goes up and down but it moves. So it has to be a staircase, because, you know, sometimes you're like, what is it? But actually now I'm really curious about like some of the other answers. I feel like it's only a staircase, but you guys are all going to have like so many other options, which I love to see. Yeah, okay. Thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.